Welcome to Seaside Quilting Tutorials. My name is Terry, and today we're going to make some egg-shaped placemats, and more kind of for Easter, but I didn't have any Easter fabrics on hand, so to speak. So this is a Henry Glass and Company pattern that I'm using, and so I decided I would use the Henry Glass Lavender Garden, mainly those fabrics from that line, and I'm falling in love with them as I use them. So let's get started. So you'll get all of your sizes that you need to cut out from your pattern. We're going to have kits available, so from Seaside Quilting Supplies, that is, and you'll get the pattern when you pick up your kit. So the first thing that I did was I cut out all my strips, and we're going to sew those together. And basically what we're doing is each strip, I started with my center and worked my way out this way, and now I'm going to work my way out this way. So you're going to put right side to right side, and you're just going to line everything up. And I like to use my clips, so I'm clipping. I'm starting at one end. And you can use pins, whichever suits you better. I just like clips. I feel like I go along, well, I probably go along the same speed either way. I just kind of like my clips. So you just go ahead and you'll do right sides together, and you'll clip this along. And once you've got it all clipped, I'm using my 1/4 inch guide foot, and I'm going to be using 2.0 stitches. Now, whenever you're doing strips, I just want to point this out. This is just the same thing that happens with borders when you measure your borders. When you first go to clip it or line it up and you're holding it, it will look like it's not going to fit. But as you clip and you spread it out, you'll get it to lay down nice and neat. And then you're just going to do your 1/4 inch all the way across. Once you've sewn each strip, so I'll get my green one here, and then I've already done my center, so my next one would be my lavender words. And then I used a purple batik, and then this one here from, oh shoot, I can't remember the name at the moment. I've been doing a few tutorials today, so names of things are starting to scatter in my brain. So like I said, you'll do your green. You'll press your seams towards the dark, and when you sew on, and then you'll sew your words on the same way, your next strip. And I've pressed all my seams going towards the dark, so all of my seams are going in like this, which just kind of keeps your seams all kind of nice and neat. Okay. So once you have all your strips sewn together, and I know that you know how to sew those, just a 1/4 inch. So then our next step, which I've already gone ahead and done, and if you've been watching my tutorials, you'll see how we press and all that kind of thing. So if you're new to quilting and you've never quilted before, I really recommend that you go and watch some of the other tutorials and you kind of see how to do your pressing and all that kind of stuff, your 1/4 inch seams and everything. So one of the first things that I had to do before I even cut everything out, or well, you could do it after, it doesn't matter. I had to take my pattern, the egg shape, and I had to take it to a copy shop. Now I just went to FedEx because they're the closest one by that has the copier and printer that can do an enlarged size for me. There's other places, Staples and Office Depot, so many different ones that you can go to that have big enough printers that they can enlarge the size. And I had them enlarge it 200%, just like it tells you to do on the pattern. Now, while I was there, I had a gentleman who was not familiar with enlarging patterns. If that happens to you, just point, and because he was like, well, I'm not really sure if this came out the right size or not. It looks pretty big, and I told him it was supposed to look pretty big. And you can just point out to them that there is a little square down here, and if they measure that square and it equals 1 inch, then it's what you want. And it wasn't very expensive at all, so I was very pleased with that. It was a lot better than trying to figure it out by hand, how big I was going to need it. So it was worth going and getting that printed up. So once you've done that, it will help if I explain this. So now that I've got all my seams done, everything is nicely pressed toward the dark side on here. So all my seams run really nice and neat. You just lay your egg shape down on your fabric. And I used a water-soluble pen. You could use an air erase one. You could use chalk. There's so many different things that you can use to mark with. Whatever suits you best, whatever you have on hand, go ahead and use that. Trace out your egg. And I didn't cut this one out ahead of time. Let me grab my scissors. Okay, I've got my scissors. I have to hide my gingers so that no one ends up cutting anything with them except for me on my fabric. I love these. They're nice and sharp. So you're going to go ahead, once you've traced out your eggs, you're going to cut them out. So I'm going to cut these two apart right down the center here. I put them kind of close together. I like to salvage every bit of fabric that I possibly can because I can use it in another project. And I'll have a small piece over here at the end that I'll get to use for something. I don't know what yet, but I'll use it for something. So you just go ahead, follow your line, and cut out your egg. Make sure you don't end up cutting your other egg that's underneath. That would be a disaster. Okay, put that down in my salvage bin, and I'll find a use for it at some point in time. Or at least that's what I keep telling myself. So I hope everybody's having a good day. We're starting to get some nice spring weather here in Virginia. And just be careful as you're getting to your seams and cutting. Sometimes they want to flip up on you and give you a little trouble. And my marker's blending in a little bit with some of the colors up here, so I'm just being careful. There we go. So now we have our egg shape. And I'm just going to set this one aside for now, and I'll sew that one later. You will do the same exact thing with your batting as you did with your egg and your backing. And for my backing, I decided I would use the all over lavender. I thought that was really pretty for the backing. I think that's going to be really nice for the backing. And you just want to line that up over your batting. Actually, that's, yeah. So you're going to line that on top of your batting. But your top side, you're going to put on top of your back side. And line that up. And just check around your edges that you've got everything lined up nicely. And I'm going to put just a few clips around as I check it. Don't really need a lot. But I just want to check as I go around, so I figure I might as well put just a little bit of clips in. So it stays in place. Now as you can see, if I hadn't checked it right here, I would end up without any batting. And I want to fix that. So I'm just going to shake it a little bit, get it into place. Make sure that my top's lined up. You got all your raw edges lined up nice and neat to each other. Now it might not be exactly 100% perfect because it's going to depend on how everything got cut out, of course. But you want it as close as possible, having it all lined up. You don't want one side more to the other, you know, by a large amount than the other side, because then it won't come out looking quite like an egg. Okay, so right here, I am going to put 2 clips to remind me that I'm going to start in one spot, move this clip over some, and I'm going to stop in another spot. So I'm going to leave, about a 3-inch opening. I'm going to move this one over just a little bit and this one over just a little bit, because I'd like my opening to be on the side. Oh, that's about, well, it's about 4 inches, but that's fine. Okay. So when we start, and we're going to be doing a 1/4 inch seam going around. Get my pattern piece out of my way. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to double check on the top, because as you can see, if I hadn't double checked on the top, I have a spot over here that it's not lined up as well as I thought. You kind of have to check both sides and make sure that you got them lined up before you sew. It's always good to double check. I like to measure twice before I cut, and I like to double check twice before I sew. It just avoids needing to get that seam ripper out, and if you cut something too short, you just can't fix that. Okay, so I've got my 2 clips down here to remind me where I'm going to stop and start. And these aren't going to be exactly 100% perfectly on top of each other, because it's going to depend on how you drew around each piece. And I'll be honest with you, when it came to the batting, my felt tip started to wear out. The batting was soaking up a lot of the ink out of it. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I've got one more spot here I want to get lined up, and then we'll get sewing. Get this laying flatter. I know I'm fidgeting with it a lot, but I just want to make sure it's going to come out looking nice. Okay, so we've got that all done. I'm going to stick those gingers back in a drawer where nobody finds them. Okay, so let's move the camera over where you can see. There we go. So I'm going to start right about here. And I'm going to start just before where these two seams are. Okay. Just going to fix this just a little bit to make sure. There we go. And I'm going to sew forward 3/4 stitches, and then I'm going to go in reverse 3/4 stitches, and that's just to reinforce it so when I turn this all around that it's going to stay in place for me and I'm not going to end up ripping my stitches. Now as you're going around the curve, you're just going to do a few stitches and turn as you go. Remove your clips or your pins as you're coming around. And you'll have to poke those seams down in. Now I'm going to grab my awl so I can hold those little, because it was kind of a point and it's sticking up. And you don't want to ever get your fingers in the way on something like that, because it's not worth having a needle end up in your fingers. And really, these placemats are super easy. They're not very long to do at all. The longest part was cutting the strips out and sewing the strips together. After that, it's easy breezy. When you do come around to a seam that's facing in that direction, it does poke up a little bit. So just make sure I get it underneath my foot. That way I don't end up with wonky seams. And sometimes by just letting my foot come up and go into the pivot position, that other seam will go right underneath. Okay, so that was my last clip. I'm going to sew in reverse and then forward again just to secure that side and cut it. Now when you go to turn this, we're going to go between the two layers of fabric. You don't want to go between the bottom of your placemat and the batting. You want to make sure that you're between the two pieces of fabric. And you're just going to reach your hand in there and kind of poke your fabric over and just gently push it through. You don't need to rush it. You don't want to pull on them too hard. You want your seams, your stitching on the side there, to stay in place real nice for you. So because this is a circle, we aren't going to have any corners. I do take my fingernails and I go around on the inside, around the seam, and push it out. It helps that seam to set a little bit. So I just run my nail up against them. And I finger press, go around and just use my fingers and finger press. I'm going to poke out the rest of this. I think these are going to be adorable. And I'm loving the fabrics. And using this for Easter, like I said, you're going to get more usage out of them. Than if you had them be Easter fabric. So then you just want to make sure that your seam is staying nice on the side. You don't want it going down towards the back like that one was. You just want to check it all the way around and finger press. And if you have to, you just get your, if you see that a part isn't coming out nice, you just stick your finger in there and press it out. And I just go around and check and make sure that my seam is nice in place. And this one I need to poke out a little more. And then you'll press it. And when you press it, you're going to fold these edges in. And you'll have to fold over your batting as well because that was sewn into your seam as well. And if you press this with your iron as you go around, just be careful that you're not catching onto the batting when you do it. Trying to make sure I get this so that you can see more of what I'm doing. I'm just going to back the camera up just a little bit. There we go. So your opening, you just want to press that in, and you would just take your iron and press that in, and then you're going to take your top and press that over it. And you can either hand stitch this once you've got it all pressed with your iron, or you can, or you can go on your machine and you could do a top stitch all the way around. And you could even use a decorative stitch to go around your edge. Now it's up to you if you want to, how you want to quilt this after you've got it all completed. I'm going to hand stitch this a little bit later. Once I get all four of mine put together, I'll just press that down nice and neat so it matches up and gets that egg shape. And once I get it the way that I want it pressed, so it looks like the other side over there, then I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch in the ditch on each one of the lines. It's basically on each side of these. I will go and I will do a stitch in the ditch. And I might go around the edge with a decorative stitch. I'm not decided yet. I'll have to take a look and see what I have for stitches. I know I've got quite a few in my machine, and I quite often don't have a chance to use them or forget to use them. Or I get in a hurry and don't use them, one or the other. So I might do that. You could even do decorative stitches on each one of your seams as well. If you have a cute decorative stitch that you'd like to use, you could do that on the seams. That would look really pretty as well. It's really all up into what you would like it to look like. So our next tutorial will be for the table runner that goes with the placemats. So I hope to see you back for that. You've been with Seaside Quilting Tutorials. My name is Terri. I hope that you'll take just a moment and like the video if you found it helpful, and subscribe to Seaside Quilting Supplies channel. I'm sorry. And there's a little bell right next to the subscribe button, and if you click on that little bell, you have a chance to change your notifications to all, and when the next tutorial comes out, you'll be able to get notified, and you'll know when the table runner comes out that goes with this. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I wish you happy sewing.